My fiancée, Willow, was diagnosed with a terminal illness, but instead of staying by her side, I neglected her and even went abroad to unwind. After the 100th missed call, my personal secretary finally picked up the phone. On the other end, I could hear Willow's voice trembling, almost breaking down. She asked, "Where are you? Who's with you?" I couldn't help but sneer and say, "Didn't we agree to give each other freedom? We decided to live our own lives. Can't you handle that?" Willow and I were like childhood sweethearts who grew into strangers. We had mutual feelings as teenagers, but before we could even confess to each other, she met her so-called fated person, Makoto. Under pressure from his parents, Makoto broke up with her right before graduation and left the country. Heartbroken, Willow somehow finished college, with my help. But just as she was finally starting to move on, Makoto suddenly came back to start a business. For reasons I couldn't understand, Willow used all her savings to support him and even became his personal secretary, staying by his side late into the night. Just before our families were about to announce our engagement, I realized I was about to play the role of the typical villainous supporting character, the one who schemes against the main lead and ends up destroyed by his own actions. But that wasn't what I planned to do. On the contrary, I understood them both very well. After all, it wasn't until I found myself with a personal secretary that I realized something important. Life is short. Enjoy it while you can. People need someone considerate by their side, especially someone like me, a domineering CEO. Chapter 2. I inherited the family business earlier than Willow did. She had spent 3 years in high school and 2 in college caught up in relationships, while I never stopped studying. By my first year of high school, I had already mastered everything required for the college entrance exam. During those 2 years when Willow was busy dating Makoto, I, under my father's guidance, began learning international finance. During summer vacation, Willow was out racing cars by the river with Makoto, while my father and I flew abroad to attend financial seminars. After the entrance exams, I easily got into the university and major I wanted. Then I began learning about company operations and management. Willow, on the other hand, was so heartbroken after her breakup that she failed her exam. Her family, the Lius, spent a lot of money to get her into a private college that was considered respectable among the wealthy. Coincidentally, the school was in the same city as mine, actually in the same district. Mrs. Liu asked me to take care of her daughter. I smiled and agreed, looking at Willow with deep affection. I said, "Willow is just temporarily shaken by a setback. She feels a lack of self-worth, but she's such an exceptional girl. She deserves all the best things in the world. No matter how many challenges lie ahead, I'll be by her side to help her become a better version of herself." Mrs. Liu looked at me, visibly moved, with a hint of deeper thought. She was the embodiment of a modern, independent woman, someone who liked hearing the right words. So I had carefully chosen what to say. If Willow kept focusing only on love and not on herself, then the best way to protect her from being taken advantage of by men was to have someone by her side who could bring her stability, someone who was deeply devoted to her. After that, the Liu family handed 3 projects to us. My father was very pleased. Just before I left for university in the capital, he called me into his study and asked, "What do you think of that girl from the Liu family?" "She's average," I replied. "Aside from being good-looking, she's good for nothing." My father burst out laughing and nodded approvingly. "George, remember this," he said. "Emotions are worthless compared to interests. Never become someone else's blood bag. You can like someone, but your affection should never outweigh your ideals and ambitions. For women who don't appreciate you and only know how to take, don't try to change or nurture them. Treat them like spoiled children, indulge them, enjoy the moment, and play along. After all, who says you can only have one woman?" I lowered my gaze, thought for a moment, then looked up at my father and smiled knowingly. Chapter 3. In Willow's eyes. I might have seemed deeply in love with her. In her freshman year, after Makoto left and she spent every day crying, I made it a habit to bring her breakfast every morning before she woke up, hot soup and tea cakes just the way she liked them. At first, she resisted and said, "George, after meeting Makoto, I realized I've always seen you as a brother. I'll never fall in love with you, so please stop doing these unnecessary things." I simply smiled without replying, handed her the breakfast, and left. As usual, I posted a message visible only to Mrs. Liu. Morning run completed. The photo would conveniently show a corner of Willow's school gate. Soon, Mrs. Liu would like the post. Our families were in talks about a collaboration, and things were going very smoothly. I put my phone away, zipped up my tracksuit, and continued jogging along the leaf-covered path. I wasn't lying, I really was exercising. A good heir to a company needed to stay healthy, so I ran 4 kilometers every morning and passed by Willow's school to bring her breakfast. It didn't take much effort. Later, I started entering various university entrepreneurship competitions to hone my skills. For some of the more prestigious ones, I gave Willow a small push, adding her as a team member. She was deeply moved just by that. One night, after drinking heavily, she leaned into my arms and said softly, "George, I've realized for a long time that you've always been in the corner, quietly giving without asking for anything in return. I want to reciprocate your feelings." I turned my head, remaining silent, as though I hadn't heard her. The next day, when Willow sobered up, she probably regretted being so forward. We both tacitly avoided the subject afterward. But the look in her eyes when she saw me changed. It carried a sense of guilt. Of course, I wasn't the only one she felt guilty toward. She once thought my quiet devotion came from being busy, too busy doing favors for classmates connected to our family business. Everyone had different needs. Some just wanted to copy my homework. Others wanted to use my name to reassure their families while they played around. And some were looking for emotional returns. I was too busy to talk about it openly. So even though I never confessed my feelings to Willow, somehow she got the impression that I was hopelessly in love with her, humble to the point of being invisible. I did have feelings for Willow before she fell into decline because of her relationship with Makoto. Among all the people I'd ever helped, Willow was the one I cared about the most. I went beyond my own boundaries for her. It was because at that time, Willow wasn't just beautiful, she was extraordinary. Smart, charming, and effortlessly radiant in every situation. She was special to me, and everyone around us assumed we would eventually become a couple. There were moments when I'd catch myself staring at her delicate face, lost in daydreams, thinking how nice it would be if things really turned out that way. But after Makoto appeared, everything changed. Willow began following him everywhere, skipping classes, drinking, getting tattoos, racing cars, and partying at nightclubs, chasing after some kind of so-called freedom. Her grades plummeted, and she even went viral on social media for a few suggestive videos. In the end, both she and Makoto got into trouble for underage drinking and driving without a license. "Willow from the Liu family is finished," my father remarked at the time. I agreed with him, and so I decided to stop investing my emotions. I pulled back, and after that, everything in my life started running smoothly. With my help, Willow gradually began to smile again. She was still smart and capable, and with Mrs. Liu's financial support and care, she eventually recovered. By the time she graduated from university, she re-entered our circle of second-generation heirs. Afterward, Willow started interning at her family's company, while I went back home to prepare for my own inheritance. As our company continued to grow, Mrs. Liu proposed a marriage alliance. Holding Willow's hand, she looked down at me and said, "Normally, I wouldn't agree to let Willow marry beneath her status. Only the heir of the Mu family is truly worthy of her. But she insists on marrying you, and I can't change her mind. So you must cherish her, love her, put her first in everything, and never disappoint her feelings. Understand?" I smiled and nodded, promising Mrs. Liu, but the very next day, after the engagement gifts were exchanged, Makoto, the main figure from Willow's youth, returned from abroad, seemingly determined to reclaim everything he'd once lost. Willow immediately poured all her savings into supporting his new business venture. After that, she began keeping her distance from me. She stayed carefully by Makoto's side, as if convinced that I would go mad with jealousy and try to harm him. She went out of her way to avoid any situation where the two of us might meet. But what she didn't know was that while she was caught up with Makoto, I had found myself a personal secretary. Someone more considerate, more gentle, and with far greater potential than Willow. Most importantly, she didn't come from a privileged background. She understood the value of gratitude and knew her limits. Chapter 5. When Makoto came to see me, I had just finished a business meeting and was resting in the reception room with my secretary, Sophia. Sophia was highly perceptive, not just in business but in everything else as well. The moment she noticed my expression change when Makoto entered, She quietly excused herself and went out to prepare coffee, leaving us enough time to talk privately. I looked across at Makoto. He wore a loose suit with a flashy shirt underneath, his hair carefully styled, and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses resting on his nose, giving him the air of a man trying to appear refined, but not quite managing to hide his self-indulgence. Judging by his appearance, he was still the same as he'd been back in high school, the kind of person who drew attention with his careless charm. That rebellious aura had once fascinated Willow. She used to say she'd never met anyone with such a free soul. Without hesitation, she'd accepted his confession and fallen headfirst into that so-called freedom, only to start her downward spiral. Thinking of that, I couldn't help but smile faintly. I leaned back on the sofa, relaxed, and gestured for him to speak. In contrast, Makoto seemed tense. He tried to appear calm but couldn't quite manage it. His legs shook nervously, his lips were dry, and his fingers kept rubbing together in agitation. Finally, he looked up at me and forced a smile. "I heard Mr. Wang is about to get engaged to Willow," he began. "There's been some misunderstanding between us lately, and I feel guilty, so I wanted to—" Hearing his attempt at polite probing, I couldn't help but feel disappointed. To think they saw me as nothing more than a naive, rich heir, desperate enough to take on someone else's mess. It was insulting. I pinched the bridge of my nose and cut him off. "Mr. Ito, what do you think of her?" I asked, nodding toward the door. Makoto turned and saw Sophia standing there. She was tall and graceful, and even in her simple professional attire, she carried herself with quiet confidence. She was holding a drink carefully, her eyes fixed on me through the glass door. When she noticed me looking back, she smiled faintly, just enough to show warmth, but not too much to be inappropriate. Of course, this wasn't natural. Sophia had learned my preferences and practiced how to present herself exactly this way. I knew all that, but I didn't care who she really was inside. As long as she made me feel comfortable, she could stay by my side. That was the difference between Willow and me. Willow had poured all her feelings into an illusion, a version of Makoto she had created in her mind. She never learned to recognize reality, and in the end, was easily played by those beneath her. Perhaps realizing what I was about to say, Makoto's expression darkened. But he knew he had no leverage, so he forced a smile and replied, "This young lady is quite impressive. Beautiful, loyal to Mr. Wang, truly a rare beauty." "Rare, is she?" I interrupted with a scoff. Makoto froze, but I went on, smiling. "As long as I like her, I can have as many women like her as I want. I could change them every day if I felt like it." Makoto's face stiffened. I leaned forward slightly. "People should understand their place. Someone like her, who depends on me, shouldn't talk about independence. She spends my money, so naturally she belongs in my world. That's the difference between me and Willow. A few sweet words are enough to win her over, to make her give everything she has to someone else. All that proves is her foolishness, nothing more. As for me, I won't pay someone to worship me, and I'll never tie my future to any woman." With each word, Makoto's expression grew darker, his fists tightening on his knees. "So, Mr. Ito," I said calmly, "your efforts are misdirected." I leaned back into the sofa, lifted a hand slightly, and immediately one of my staff entered the room. Without a word, he extended his hand toward Makoto, who hesitated before reluctantly pulling a small voice recorder and hidden camera from his pocket. It was laughable. Did he really think I'd stoop to confronting him over a woman? Throughout the exchange, Sophia stood quietly beside me. When the man left, she leaned forward and handed me a freshly made cup of coffee, her eyes never leaving mine, as if no one else in the room mattered. I reached out, gently touched her cheek, and gave a satisfied nod. Makoto couldn't stand it any longer. He stood abruptly, his face pale, and hurried out of the room without another word. "Mr. Wang, he might have other recording devices hidden on him," one of my assistants said, standing straight and addressing me respectfully. "It's fine," I replied calmly. "He'll figure it out." Then, without another glance, I picked up the financial report from my desk and began reading. Of course, I'd known from the start. Makoto was an ambitious man. He knew exactly what he wanted and understood how to take each step toward it. Otherwise, when Willow's mother had approached him before graduation, he wouldn't have left so easily. He took enough money and went abroad, receiving an elite education he could never have accessed otherwise. He'd used time and distance to his advantage. turning himself into the eternal moonlight in Willow's memory. Makoto had always been rational and deliberate. That little encounter earlier was nothing but a test that made him realize he wasn't my equal, that he wasn't even qualified to be my opponent. We weren't in the same league. What I pursued was entirely different from what he and Willow were chasing. I never went out of my way to create enemies, and he wasn't foolish enough to make me one. Besides, I've always been someone who values talent, as long as that talent doesn't get in my way. As expected, after that day, Makoto never came to find me again. Instead, he tightened his control over Willow under the pretense of love, refusing to let her meet or even speak to me. Our engagement, already delayed multiple times, began to look more and more like a joke. At a recent gathering between our two families, Mrs. Liu finally gave Willow an ultimatum, ordering her to appear at the family dinner. Willow agreed, but halfway through, the Liu family's butler received a call. Willow had been in a car accident. She claimed her injuries were severe and that she was being taken to the hospital. Without waiting for Mrs. Liu's response, she hung up. It was obvious she thought I wouldn't be angry. She assumed a poor excuse would be enough to pacify me, that I'd tolerate it like always. But this time it wasn't just any meeting. It was a dinner between both families. Her absence was a public humiliation, a slap to the faces of both households. My father's expression darkened in front of Mr. and Mrs. Liu, though deep down, I knew he was secretly pleased. He couldn't have wished for a better display of Willow's foolishness. Mr. Liu raised his glass to toast my father, but my father brushed it aside and left immediately. As one of F-City's most prominent businessmen, being disrespected by a junior like that was intolerable. If he had ordered the entire restaurant torn apart on the spot, no one would have blamed him. Mr. Liu turned to speak to me, but Mrs. Liu gave him a sharp glare. Helplessly, he forced a smile, sat back down, and drank in silence. I stayed and finished the meal with them, though I barely said a word. To Mrs. Liu, my silence looked like devotion, proof of my deep affection and patience for Willow. Before I left, she pulled me aside and handed me a document. It was the deed to a piece of land the Liu family had recently purchased in the southern district of the city. I declined twice, but in the end, I accepted it reluctantly. "George," she said softly, "you're a good boy. I've seen your feelings for Willow all these years. She's still young and doesn't understand, but I know your heart for her is sincere. That's why I trust you to take care of her. Don't worry, one day she'll be moved by your love." She paused, then added, "If the Wang family ever needs anything, just ask Auntie. I'll do my best to help." Hearing those words, I finally allowed myself a sincere smile, one that came from deep inside. Chapter 7. When I got home that night, my father was lying on the sofa, playing video games. I tossed my jacket onto the floor and slouched into the seat across from him. "Did it work out?" he asked casually. "Yeah, it's done," I said. "At least 20 billion this time." "Your face still holds some weight." My father smiled contentedly. The sharp lines of his face caught the dim light, and I was struck once again by how time seemed to favor him. Even as the years passed, they only deepened the commanding aura around him, powerful, ruthless, and cold. That was how the world saw him, and it was also what I aspired to become. I thought back to when I was 18. A woman claiming to be my birth mother had appeared. She brought a beautifully packaged cake and told me with teary eyes that from now on I would have a mother who loved me. She said, "Your father raised you to be a monster just like him. But to be human, you should live in the light. Now your mother is here to fill the love missing from your heart." I remember smiling faintly at her words. She mistook that smile for acceptance. Her eyes filled with hope and greed she could barely conceal. She had planned it all carefully. She showed up only after my 18th birthday, once I officially gained my inheritance rights. If I acknowledged her, she would have the leverage to stand against my father. But in the next moment, I politely asked her to leave. Afterward, I took certain measures to ensure she could never approach me or my father again. I had considered investigating her background, but after hearing her speech that day, I realized there was no need. I'd already met too many people like her in my life, people whose pasts held no lessons worth learning. My father once told me calmly, "You were the result of someone's scheme against me." That incident was a stain on my life, But your existence is not my shame. You are my son and an independent individual. How your mother behaves is not something others can use to insult you. I respect your choices, but I hope we share the same aspirations. If you can stand by my side, our bond will be deeper than blood. I am my father's proudest son, his companion on the battlefield, so I would never cater to women, nor allow their emotions to influence me. As my father always said, when you're strong enough, people will come running to love you. And you'll have the freedom to choose whichever kind of love you want. To reward me, my father registered a new company in a neighboring city as a birthday gift for my upcoming 26th birthday. The truth is, my own hands weren't entirely clean, but perhaps it was because Mrs. Liu had been putting more and more pressure on Willow. Her behavior had grown increasingly erratic and rebellious. She'd begun openly challenging her mother at every opportunity. Before, Willow had never been able to get over Makoto leaving her right before the college entrance exams. That unfinished chapter of her youth, the one without a perfect ending, would always remain her deepest regret. She once told me that herself, tears streaming down her face. And though I believed that a youth filled with reckless love, tattoos, racing cars, drinking, and clubbing was best concluded behind bars, I still pretended to sympathize with her. With a melancholic expression, Willow said bitterly, "Forget it. You'll never understand me. Someone as rule-abiding as you could never understand." There were indeed things I didn't understand, but one thing I knew for sure. Willow, weighing barely 100 pounds, carried at least 99 pounds of defiance. When Mrs. Liu forcibly separated her from Makoto, her obsession with him only deepened. And now, when Mrs. Liu was desperate to form a marriage alliance with the Wang family, she still wouldn't allow Willow to be with him. That only drove Willow, who was determined to pursue her own love, to further extremes. Whether by accident or intention, I couldn't tell, but recently an overwhelming number of photos of Willow and Makoto had begun circulating online. Their closeness in those pictures went far beyond that of mere friends. The engagement dinner that had been planned was once again delayed, and online speculation surged. Willow's behavior all but confirmed the rumors that the engagement between our families was crumbling. My father seized the opportunity, extracting another large sum from Mrs. Liu under the guise of compensation. It was clear that both Mr. and Mrs. Liu were growing exhausted from constantly cleaning up their daughter's messes. Eventually, they told Willow bluntly that if she insisted on choosing Makoto, they would sever ties with her. Perhaps once that threat might have worked, but not now. Willow saw Makoto as her only pillar of support, her weapon against her family. She went public on social media, declaring that she would never again be a puppet, that she would break free from her unhappy family and be with Makoto no matter how hard life became. Her statement was loud and dramatic. But ironically, in her daily life, she continued to enjoy all the privileges of being a Liu heiress. By 2025, though, netizens were no longer sympathetic to rich girls claiming to suffer tragic lives. Her comment section quickly filled with ridicule. Wait, am I reading this right? She's cutting off her parents who supported her for 20 years for some loser? Mrs. Liu's a brilliant modern woman. How did she end up raising such a love-obsessed daughter? LOL. She got the betrothal gifts one day and cheated the next. I'd rather raise a slab of meat than deal with this mess. These rich girls' biggest heartbreak is being dumped before the college entrance exam while we're out here worrying about rent. Can you spoiled people please be more low-key? Can Mrs. Liu adopt me instead? I promise I'll be obedient. Please use your money to control my life. Before long, the internet had given her nicknames like Puppet Sister and Little Thug Girl. Overwhelmed, Willow quietly disabled her comments section. Still, because of the ongoing business interests and public relations needs between our families, I decided to call her. I had planned to discuss how to handle the situation, but she greeted me with mockery instead. "What's this?" she sneered. "You say you love me so much and now you can't even keep up the act?" Then her tone grew sharp. "George, do you know how disgusting you look right now, acting like my mother's puppet trying to control me? You've been chasing after me for years just to marry me, haven't you? Fine, I'll marry you. But my heart and my body belong to Makoto. I'll marry you, but you'll stop interfering in my life. We'll live separately. You do your thing, I'll do mine." I replayed her words in my mind, amused. Hadn't she once been the one who insisted on the marriage alliance? When did that turn into me begging for it? That's not possible, I said coolly. I can't be as shameless as you. Then I hung up, posted the recording online, and publicly announced the end of our engagement. The reaction was immediate. Willow's words ignited outrage across social media. I wasn't sure if Mrs. Liu still thought I was hopelessly in love with her daughter or if she had simply given up trying to contain her. Either way, she made no move to control the narrative or manage Willow's PR. The internet tore into Willow and Makoto relentlessly. Later, Willow called me, asking me to delete the recording. Her tone was calm, her emotions reined in. Ridiculous, wasn't it? I blocked her number and pinned my breakup announcement at the top of my profile. After that, I threw myself into work and heard little about her, until one day, I saw her again, completely by chance. My latest project had gone exceptionally well, and my father gave me 3 days off as a reward. I was barefoot by the sea, enjoying the quiet rhythm of the waves, when a familiar voice, trembling with anger, cut through the air. "George!" I opened my eyes. Willow was standing a short distance away, her expression dark and furious. She bit her lip and glared at me. "Is this fun for you? You just can't stay away, can you? Wherever I go, you follow. What are you—" My mom's dog sent to watch me. She stormed toward me, pointing a finger, shouting about how no one had the right to control her life. Just then, Sophia returned, and before I could say a word, slap. Sophia's hand struck Willow so hard she fell to the sand. Her face turned red almost instantly. I quietly ended the call I'd been having with Mrs. Liu and took the opportunity to send her the recorded audio. "Sorry, Mrs. Liu," I texted. "I just happened to run into Willow and wanted to share some good news with you. I didn't expect her to react like this. I didn't even have time to explain." Her chat window stayed silent for a long time. Then finally a short reply appeared. "Don't worry about her." I raised an eyebrow. It seemed Mrs. Liu was truly finished with her daughter this time. For a brief moment, I recalled the rumors that Mr. and Mrs. Liu had recently opened a new joint business account. Apparently, Willow had indeed been cast aside. But she, it seemed, still hadn't realized it. Soon after, during a beach event, the competition for the Flower Girls bouquet turned chaotic. 2 women in bikinis started fighting over it, clawing at each other. In the end, Willow lost her footing and was knocked down by Sophia, who slapped her again. But Willow, refusing to back down, kept cursing and lashing out, each insult earning her another slap. Although I had no interest in watching fights, after 30 long minutes, I finally stepped in. Chapter 9. "Enough," I said evenly, my voice cutting through the commotion. Willow lay on the ground, her once beautiful face swollen and red. Only her eyes still burned with fury, glaring at me as though she wanted to set me on fire. "I came here to relax," I said coldly. "Running into you was an accident, but your tantrum has ruined my mood, and now I just feel unlucky. It's probably best if we never see each other again." My voice was calm, but Willow looked as if my cold words had pierced straight through her. She froze, unable to process the sudden change in my demeanor. Just as I turned to leave with Sophia, I heard Willow scramble up from the ground behind us. "George!" she shouted, pointing at Sophia. "Who is she?" Before I could respond, Sophia suddenly threw herself into my arms. "Hubby, she hurt me," she said in a trembling voice. My expression darkened instantly. Sophia, completely unaware, continued acting cute, still holding on to me. Then she looked at Willow and said, "You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know that I'm George's true love. The one he really wants to marry is me. That's all you need to know." Her hand was trembling slightly as she clung to my arm. I could tell she was nervous. She was taking a risk, and she couldn't even bring herself to look me in the eye. "How dare you shamelessly try to take my place?" "I'm his fiancé," Willow screamed, her voice breaking as she rushed toward us. Before she could reach us, Makoto appeared and raised his hand to stop her. After a brief struggle, he lost control of his emotions and shoved Willow to the ground before turning and walking away. It took a moment for Willow to regain her senses. When she did, guilt flashed across her face. She quickly got up to follow him. "Let go," I said coldly to Sophia, then slapped her across the face. A line of bodyguards I had summoned stood silently nearby. Without another glance, I turned and walked away. Sophia hurried after me, but this time the bodyguards held her back. "Why?" she cried out behind me. "You clearly like me, don't you?" I ignored her and returned to F-City, surrounded by my men. Afterward, I immediately dismissed Sophia, compensating her generously. But she wasn't satisfied. Not long after, she showed up at my doorstep again. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling, eyes red from crying. "I only called you hubby. What's wrong with that?" Perhaps she thought it was just a harmless term of endearment, just acting cute. But both of us knew exactly what that word meant, especially in that situation. And I knew what would happen if I allowed that line to blur any further. Sophia had gotten too bold. She'd started testing me, pushing boundaries I'd already made clear. And I despised being tested, especially when I had already given more than enough. I'd been satisfied with her work and had provided everything she could want: money, cars, houses. But she took all of it without keeping her promise to stay within limits. Her behavior had become too demanding, too entitled. Whether she was genuinely seeking love or trying to manipulate me into giving her an identity, I couldn't keep someone like that around. I could give her benefits, but I would never allow anyone to use emotional games to control me. Chapter 10. The next time Willow came to see me, I had already replaced her. Same graceful presence, same innocent look. But this new secretary was even more obedient than Sophia. Clearly, I had developed a preference for this type. Willow, however, seemed relieved. Smiling, she said, "I knew you were just trying to make me jealous. Since you fired her, I'll forgive you. But don't do it again." Then she glanced at my new secretary, her smile fading. "Fire her too. I don't like her." I looked at her face, still bruised and not yet healed, then glanced at my secretary. She understood immediately and politely asked Willow to leave. Willow's expression darkened. "George, what is this supposed to mean?" she demanded. I pressed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. "I thought I made myself clear last time," I said. Then I showed her the post she had made on social media about wanting freedom. "Now everyone knows the marriage alliance between our families is over. If Miss Liu is seen coming in and out of my company again, it won't look good for either of us." I thought my words were calm, even considerate. But Willow suddenly exploded in anger, sweeping everything off the coffee table. "I thought you'd understand me, George. I always thought you were different from everyone else," she screamed. I was speechless. The way she looked at me, as if I were the one betraying her, was almost absurd. Still, since we'd known each other since childhood, I restrained my temper. "You'd better start seeing me the same way you see everyone else," I said quietly. Tears filled her eyes. "Why? Makoto's been through so much abroad." "I just want to help him." "Why are you all forcing me?" She was rambling, clearly unable to understand. I didn't waste another second. I called security and had her escorted out. "Miss Liu," I said calmly, "the marriage alliance has been canceled. You and I are strangers now. Please don't appear at Wang Corporation again. You're not welcome here." Only then did Willow realize I meant it. Her eyes went blank with disbelief. "George," she murmured, but the guards were already leading her away. Finally, the room was quiet again. I checked my watch. She had wasted 40 precious minutes of my day. I'd have to stay late tonight to make up for it. Chapter 11. Willow and Makoto broke up again, this time because Makoto's company went bankrupt. And rumors spread that Mrs. Liu was pregnant with a second child. In truth, the two events were connected. Once Willow was truly abandoned, Makoto took whatever assets he could and fled. This blow hit Willow hard. She became increasingly insecure and paranoid. While she wallowed in self-pity, everyone else was busy, the Liu family preparing for their new child. My father and I focusing on expanding our market. The online industry was booming that year, especially live broadcast dramas that had suddenly become popular. Their revenue shocked the entire business world. Naturally, every major company in F-City wanted a share of the profit. The Liu family had even signed several well-known streamers last month, but the project collapsed after they were investigated for tax evasion. Now everyone was cautious. Still, in the world of fame and fortune, no matter how dirty things got, there was always a glossy surface covering it all. Once again, the Liu family sent us an invitation. This time, they introduced me to a young woman from a distant branch of their family. Beautiful, elegant, and perfectly aligned with my taste. During dinner, Mrs. Liu made sure she sat beside me, and when I didn't refuse, her smile widened knowingly. I could tell what she was thinking. The Liu family wanted to maintain their alliance with us. They'd already abandoned Willow, and the new baby was still uncertain. Mrs. Liu was trying to secure me for the future. I didn't reject the idea, but I didn't commit either. My hesitation seemed to annoy her, while Mr. Liu looked smug, proud to have a son again at his age. After a few too many drinks, he turned to my father and said, "What's the point of all this money? Isn't life about having a wife, kids, a warm home? That's the true meaning of a man's struggle. Without that, what's the point? A man like that is useless." My father gave him a quiet smile, then suddenly punched him square in the nose. "Worthless fool," he said coldly. "Who gave you the right to speak here?" He downed the rest of his drink while the room fell silent. Mr. Liu sobered instantly and apologized. This wasn't the first time I had noticed it. Long ago, I realized that Mr. Liu held little real authority in the Liu family. Although it was technically his family group, the financial power rested entirely in Mrs. Liu's hands. I even once suspected that Mr. Liu might be a door-in husband. Later, I learned that he had voluntarily handed over control to Mrs. Liu, seeing it as an act of love and responsibility. This time, I didn't bother putting on my usual calm mask. I threw down my chopsticks, splashing wine across the face of the girl next to me, who had been gushing about how much she admired Mrs. Liu. Her expression went from admiration to confusion. I fixed her with a confirming look, making it clear that I was venting my anger. "Sorry," I said. "Our views don't align. No need to continue this conversation." With that, my father and I left the scene in high-profile fashion. What had started as a farce ended with the Liu family issuing a public apology. Over the years, the balance of power between our families had shifted. The Liu family, once equal in influence, had now fallen far behind the Wang family. My father ignored them for half a month before reluctantly forgiving them. The very next morning, the Liu family sent another new person our way. While I was out for my morning run, she appeared abruptly. "What a coincidence," I said, playing along. I didn't refuse. I led her on for a short walk. Before she could finish, a familiar figure suddenly appeared. Willow, emerging from the chaos, looked different from before. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but before she could call out my name, her gaze shifted to the person beside me. Clearly, the two were familiar with each other. The new secretary was the first to speak. "Cousin," she said casually. Willow rolled her eyes, ignored her, and turned to me. "George, why are you with her?" she asked softly. I shrugged. "This is my new marriage prospect from the Liu family. We're working on building a relationship." Willow froze. Resentment filled her gaze. She took a few steps forward, trying to grab my hand, but I pushed her away. The girl beside me, with a tone full of pretension, sneered, "Sis, you've been out of the picture for too long. Lost all your manners. Didn't you hear what George said? I'm his marriage prospect now." Willow ignored her and shouted at me, "George! I sent you a message. You saw it, didn't you? A message. Not long ago, my secretary had reported that my inbox was flooded with junk mail. I hadn't been interested in sorting through it, so she handled everything. My posture of deep thought must have caused Willow to misunderstand. Suddenly, her expression brightened. Her eyes sparkled as she said earnestly, "I understand now. You must have been forced into this. Wait for me. I'll go talk to my mom about this." With that, she turned and left, leaving me staring blankly at her cousin. Curious, I had my secretary restore the junk emails in my inbox. Among the countless messages, she thoughtfully selected a few representative ones. I scanned one quickly. "George, I've misunderstood you all this time. Makoto has been lying to me. It turns out you're the only one who truly loves me in this world. I'll wait." I didn't even finish reading before switching off my phone. The more I saw, the more I feared it might rot my brain. Sometimes I really do admire Willow. In the past few years, with the rise of new industries, many of F-City's old aristocratic families had been undergoing transformations. Several families were quietly engaged in a cutthroat struggle for survival. Yet Willow's small mind remained preoccupied with romance novels and love stories. At times, I even thought she was the punishment her parents deserved. They had spent years operating in the gray areas of business, yet their daughter remained a naive, sweet fool. Chapter 12. I initially dismissed Willow's words as empty talk, but not long after, I heard she had returned to the Liu family. A daughter who had already been discarded couldn't expect to be pampered upon her return. Neither my father nor I had much hope for her, so we focused on other fronts. In the past, Mrs. Liu had hidden traps within the projects she entrusted to us. She had never intended to let go of the Wang family's stake. Even if the marriage alliance had succeeded, this old fox would have found the perfect opportunity to detonate her trap and ruin us completely. Her scheming nature had never been hidden. She had subtly encouraged Willow to approach me when we were in school, but she hadn't foreseen that Willow would be intercepted by a small-time thug. Willow had gone on to become an internet celebrity, starring in short dramas, but the rivalry between the Liu and Wang families never ceased. We accepted the projects the Liu family offered, but the pit they thought they had dug for us would ultimately backfire. We expected to drag things out, but Willow surprised us. She actually hospitalized her father. Mr. Liu discovered Mrs. Liu had been cheating, and when he confronted her, Willow, in a fit of anger, grabbed a vase and struck him. Mrs. Liu, rather than feeling guilty, was relieved and proud. She believed Willow had finally grown up and seen reason. She even rushed to the hospital to scold her child. Honestly, my father and I thought she had gone a bit unhinged, but recalling Mrs. Liu's younger days, we weren't surprised. She had transformed from an ordinary village girl into a high society lady by following a moral code with no bottom line, marrying 4 times, sending 2 ex-husbands to prison, and keeping most of their assets. When Mrs. Liu and Willow visited again, they expected me to rush out and embrace Willow with excitement. But my father and I were already en route to Paris for a vacation. Mrs. Liu and Willow couldn't even step through our front door. Willow, who had arrived full of ambition, now looked utterly defeated. The butler tried persuading her to leave, and when that failed, they resorted to using a drone to live-stream the scene from the yard. In the end, it was an infuriated Mrs. Liu who forcibly took Willow away. Meanwhile, my phone rang non-stop. I handed it to my secretary, who blocked one unknown number after another. After dinner, my father lazily burped. "Are we closing in now?" I asked. He smiled. "After watching the same show for so long, it's hard not to get bored." I lowered my head, set my fork and knife down, and quietly said, "Then let me settle the score for you." Chapter 13 Overnight. Negative news about the head of the Wang family spread like wildfire across every platform on the internet. The situation worsened because someone accused my father of hiring a hitman, claiming I was his accomplice in hiding the body. The reports even alleged that 26 years ago, my father had been accused of coercion, an act that allegedly led to a pregnancy. Later, to secure control of the family business, he turned the tables and claimed the woman had fabricated the story. Although he eventually served time in prison, the truth remained clouded over the years, and the woman involved lived under constant scrutiny, like a rat in hiding. A whistleblower argued that if she had truly set my father up, he would have hated her and never spent a fortune later to secure custody of the child. The truth, it seemed, was finally emerging. The mysterious exposer even pointed out that on my 18th birthday, 8 years ago, the woman had traveled to F City just to celebrate her biological son's coming of age. After that, she vanished entirely, leaving no trace. With this chain of accusations, it was easy for people to connect it to the absurd claims of my father hiring a hitman and hiding a body. I listened calmly to my secretary's report and then turned to Willow, who sat across from me. Raising an eyebrow, I asked, "Do you think I'm the accomplice too, as the exposer claims?" "Impossible," Willow said, shaking her head. Her gaze was gentle, filled with warmth. "They don't understand you, George. You're the most upright person in this world." Compared to before, her eyes were clearer, more focused. I remained silent for a moment, then laughed lightly. "Willow, perhaps you're the one who doesn't understand me." She pursed her lips, but then turned to state her purpose. "The Wangs might not survive this," she said, choking slightly. "The police are already preparing to investigate. George, maybe we can pretend to get married. At least we'd be able to save part of it." Her eyes were full of hope. I replied indifferently, "Let's wait and see. There could be a twist in the story." Willow wanted to argue further, but paused. She now understood her mother's tactics. Even if a scandal was false, Mrs. Liu could manipulate events until it seemed true. Calls for a full investigation online grew louder. I understood the public sentiment. Minor scandals among wealthy families were once entertainment, but human lives were a different matter. When a police car stopped in front of the Wang family estate, the world was watching. Crowds gathered outside the gates, live streaming every moment. The result? The police found nothing inside the Wang household. 3 days later, Mr. and Mrs. Liu were arrested for attempted murder, and the mother I had been searching for, the subject of endless speculation, finally appeared. There were no hitmen, no hidden bodies. 8 years ago, I had secretly bought her a small island, and she had been raising pigs in isolation ever since. From the moment she successfully evaded the Wang family's bodyguards and reached me, I had explained that the people after her wanted her dead. She understood quickly and cooperated, creating the illusion that she had been attacked by the Wang family. Mrs. Liu, thinking she had control, had long assumed the Wangs were at her mercy. Until recently, she had someone leak her past schemes online, hoping to teach me a lesson. I seized the opportunity, withdrawing some of the bodyguards protecting my mother, and her whereabouts were soon exposed. In the past few days, she had survived 6 car accidents, home robberies, and objects falling from high places. Terrified, she came to me for help. She didn't hesitate when asked to expose the Liu family's crimes. She revealed that they had hired a hitman and orchestrated the false accusation against my father 26 years ago. Mrs. Liu's aim had been to punish him and demonstrate the consequences of rejecting her. That same year, at a family banquet, my father had met Mrs. Liu for the first time. Already notorious in social circles, she had attempted to seduce him. My father resisted and even threatened to tell Mr. Liu. That had earned him a lifelong grudge from her. Now, with both Mrs. and Mr. Liu imprisoned, Willow stood outside my house during a storm, begging me to spare her parents. I looked down from the second floor, smiling. "I told you there would be a twist," I said calmly. "Don't get too excited. The old fox won't fall so easily." My father, standing behind me, patted my shoulder. I nodded in agreement. Chapter 14I showed Willow a clear path forward. Mrs. Liu may have fallen, but the Liu family hadn't collapsed. It was only a matter of replacing the person in power. The story was far from over. Willow choked back tears. "Do you really have to be this ruthless?" she asked. I recalled when she visited me half a month ago. I had asked, "If the truth isn't what the public thinks, what will you do? Help me or help your parents?" Her answer had been calm yet possessive. "George, why are you overthinking? We can marry first, transfer some assets, and I'll always stay by your side to face the challenges together." She wanted to control me, subtly. I could only respond in kind. When the Liu family was reported for major tax evasion, I boarded a flight to Iceland with my secretary for a vacation. Just when things seemed to settle, Willow was diagnosed with terminal stomach cancer. Her reckless youth, filled with indulgence, had caught up with her. She could no longer continue. Soon after, Mr. and Mrs. Liu were convicted of economic crimes, attempted murder, and numerous organized crime charges. By the time they were released, Willow would have aged another 3 years. When my plane landed, my secretary informed me Willow had been calling non-stop. I finally picked up. Her voice was choked with tears. "I'm dying, and you really won't regret this, George. From now on, you've lost a girl who was completely devoted to you." "Completely devoted?" I chuckled bitterly. Was she devoted on the first day of our engagement, only to cheat the next? Or was she the one who kicked me when I was down during my darkest hours? "Willow, you're not even worthy as a human being, let alone an opponent." There was a long silence. Finally, she whispered, "George, you don't understand. I really loved you. I cut her off. You were just confused, Willow. Fooled by a scumbag. It's okay. I understand." I subtly raised my hand to my secretary. She leaned her head against my palm, softly calling, "Young Master Wang." "George." "Who is she?" Willow's voice exploded over the phone. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I said lightly, "You know why Makoto came back? Someone tipped him off about your situation, letting him know his ex-girlfriend was still thinking about him. He came running like a fool." What I hadn't expected was that Willow didn't even pretend. She jumped straight into Makoto's arms, throwing a few jabs at me in her vain attempt to stir jealousy. I laughed. Who would want to be with a woman like this? Certainly not me. Late that night, I received a call from my father. You did well, he said, his voice filled with relief. I'm sorry for trapping you in my hatred all these years. From now on, take full control of your life and soar freely. I smiled. This is exactly what I've wanted, Father. To be born with your bloodline, to be taught by you, and to avenge you, that's the sweetest thing I could ever desire. In the depths of my heart, I silently completed the thought. My gaze turned toward the night, memories pulling me back to my 18th birthday. That scheming woman had appeared before me. I didn't dwell on her past, but I traced who had sent her. 30 years ago, F-City saw the rise of a promising young businessman from a prestigious family, highly educated, ambitious, and seemingly destined for success. Loyal friends, a budding career, a lover he met by chance, everything was smooth. Yet a seemingly gentle woman, a pawn bought by his rivals, accused him of coercion, leaving him scarred and falsely accused. After his arrest, despair followed. His company's IPO hung in the balance. Friends abandoned him. Even his parents turned away. Luxury, love, and care existed only under conditions of power and profit. Eventually, he used his remaining savings to secure custody of his son, me, George, and raised me alone, teaching me everything. He revived the family business single-handedly, yet the mockery never ceased. No matter how high he rose, former rivals lingered, hoping to push him back down. But now the mocking voices had finally disappeared. I had noticed it as a child, the contempt in Mrs. Liu's eyes when she spoke to my father. From that moment, I knew my target. It took 20 years to make Mrs. Liu believe I was devoted to her daughter. Even my father hadn't realized that I had intentionally grown close to Willow from the start. I am my father's child. I stand beside him against our enemies. My goal is to climb the mountains my father climbed, not to be trapped by mundane society or others' control. This is my lifelong creed, and it will never change.